lives in you and me. I can do nothing can stand in my way. Move mountain, I can do anything. Yes, I can.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Sunday Night Chat. It's the only place that you can have good, candid conversation, fun conversation, and about faith, life, and purpose on a Sunday night. I want you to go ahead and share this with as many people as you can. Go ahead and share, or like or subscribe if you haven't done so already. I want to thank you for making sure that you are always notified anytime we have new content or anything that's going out. You can go to mariojradford.com to find other resources. There's a single that came out called See It at the beginning of this year. I have a children's book called What If that came out. And there's some more content that's going to be coming out this year. So I want you to stay connected. I don't want you to miss anything. Tonight, I had, we're all quarantined, we are all staying home. So while we're at home and doing different things, I've had some great conversations with some people. And I wanted to make sure I'm bringing these conversations to you. These are many of the conversations I'm having are conversations with people that I have all the time. They've just never been recorded. Tonight, I have one of my great friends, Jawn Murray. If you don't know who Jawn Murray is, he's everything that is connected to pop culture, everything that's connected to media, anything that you see from media to Wendy Williams to The View, many different platforms. You have seen his face. You might not have known his name, but you've seen his face. So tonight we're going to talk about all the different things that are going on in the world as it relates to COVID-19, as it relates to faith, purpose, all the different things. So I don't want you to miss it. So tell your friends, text somebody, let somebody know that we're going to have a candid conversation with pop culture expert Jawn Murray. Before we go into that, I want to constantly re-echo what has been echoed throughout the nation, how we are constantly praying for all those first responders. And I'm praying for all families that have been impacted by this pandemic. Those of you who have even gone through being laid off, or those of you who are home parenting your children and trying to juggle doing telecommunication as far as work and Zoom and Skype and conference calls, and trying to provide a safe place for your house. We're in a time that we have never seen before. Whether that be economically, whether that's affecting you mentally, spiritually, we're all in this together. And I want you to know that we are praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm lifting you up, and we're going to get through this. We don't know how long it's going to be. We would like to put a day on it, say it's going to be over by this day. But sometimes we have to wrestle with that unsure, the uncertainty, and knowing that we're just going to be in this. But while we're in this, we can provide encouragement and we can lift you up. And that's what I'm doing tonight. Just providing you a conversation that's not about the news, but a conversation that will impact you in some way and give you some hope and hopefully some laughter as well. So have a great night. I'll see you after we get through with this interview again. How are you being quarantined? How do you feel about this social distancing and how it's affected all of us as churches and leaders and all that type of stuff? How do you feel about all this going on?
Man, for me, it hasn't been too bad. I've enjoyed kind of being off the road. I kind of feel like I'm in the Christmas season early because usually at the end of the year, my schedule working in the entertainment industry typically slows all the way down. I like to be closer to home, around my family, and spending time with my friends and stuff. And so I kind of feel like I'm on that schedule, though I'm not being very social during this time. Um, try to be creative around the crib, find some projects and stuff that I need to complete, catch up on emails and things like that. And who would have thought like a short walk in the neighborhood or a trip to the grocery store would be like a real outing? So, I'm trying to get up every day, motivate myself, get dressed, take on the world one day at a time. But man, like everybody else, I really want them to get a grasp on what's going on in this country, get this thing controlled and get a cure, because it's definitely a scary time in our country, particularly with the horrible leadership that we have, and to see folks that I know getting sick, and reading about people who are not winning their battle with this virus. It's a sad thing, man. And so I want them to get this thing under subjection so that we all can get back to whatever our new normal is going to be.
We had a really good conversation the other day about how you feel that faith leaders are responding to this outbreak, this pandemic, and your views on how well some are doing and how some are not, and putting their followers or those who are part of their organizations in jeopardy. What do you feel about that? How Because I know we know of a recent ministry that a pastor went somewhere and preached and then came back, and actually a lot of people were exposed to it based on contact and stuff. So how do you feel many as faith leaders are responding, and how can they respond better?
Yeah, the story that you just mentioned actually was one that's in my neighborhood. There was a pastor who went down to North Carolina. He preached. He said he wasn't feeling well when he came back. Thought maybe he had the flu, but he still got up, despite the state issues against having large gatherings and them declaring a state of emergency. He still opened his church doors, not for a small group, but 450 members were in attendance for his Sunday morning service on March 15th. He preached, left service, apparently checked into the hospital, tested positive for coronavirus. His entire ministry is now quarantined. And so, I know that for a lot of faith leaders, this has been a challenge for them for two reasons. One, some of them were not prepared. They hadn't embraced the contemporary aspects of technology. They didn't understand all the elements of streaming and how they could be effective in a streaming delivery of their ministry, and also maintain the integrity of what they had built at their churches. And so for a lot of them, they were holding on an extra week because they just didn't want to acknowledge their lack of preparedness. There were other people who, for whatever reason, believed that the government and medical warnings were standing in opposition of their faith. I think for me, that also speaks to immaturity in your faith, because if somebody is telling you that there's a fire in your building and then you need to go and gather in that building as an exercise of faith, well, that might not be the same God that I serve. Because, wisdom is something that you have to apply in situations like this, because the reality is that, the church is a place where we're supposed to heal the sick, not expose them to sickness. And I heard Pastor E. Dewey Smith say that, and it so eloquently captures what's going on here. And then there's the other, which of course to me is the most disappointing aspect, is some of these churches didn't feel like they could survive without getting that Sunday morning offering. They're a week to week, maybe a few weeks at a time type ministry, and so without an offering from a week to a week, that's a struggle. I had a first lady of a pretty decent sized church say to me, well, my church and a lot of others can't survive being closed down for maybe a month or two. And I told her that if you've got to expose your members to a virus that could potentially kill them to survive, you shouldn't survive. Your church should probably fold into a ministry where you guys can be taught and ministered to and actually get a better example of strong leadership, because I don't know that you all possess the leadership you need to lead your people. Because if you've got to gamble with their lives in an effort to try to minister to them, in an effort to try to maintain the business of church, well, that's not a church that I ever want to be a part of or ever even want to visit.
I believe that it is interesting to see. I do believe that in this, John Maxwell said a few weeks ago that in this particular crisis, we are learning how to be more creative. That it is developing many of us as leaders, people who are naturally creatives anyway, to be able to, in a sense, look at what we're doing and say that if we only were effective because we were in a building, were we really effective ever? Because if we were only effective because of a building, as far as the church per se, if we're only effective based on our buildings and we're not meeting in our buildings right now and we're not effective anymore, then that means we were probably argumentatively never effective. So I really agree.
And if you're only effective when the crowd is feeding off of you and pushing you and somebody's yelling at you, preach. And if you can't deliver the gospel of Christ without there being audience seeking Christ, well, then you might also be immature in your preaching ministry.
And I was actually not just talking about the preaching part, but even the for those of you, well, I'm gonna say this. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. For those of you who are watching right now, John and I did not have conversations about our attire. We did not text each other to say that we were going to be the men in black. This is not how this happened. It's just.
And your sweatshirt actually really is dope. I kind of look like I'm, trying to audition for the sequel of The Omen over here or something. It's just, but listen, these are Corona vibes, man. Like, I need to shape up, and
I mean, if anybody has known you, they see you plastered on all videos, on all interviews anyway. They know what you look like, so they don't know what I look like. So I had to step up my game to talk to you.
Man, I'm in the Scully.
But I wanted to I wasn't just talking about the preaching, is what I was trying to say, not just the preaching, but even the effectiveness of ministry as it relates to touching people, well, not touching people, but making sure people's needs are met, that people are doing those types of things. But your thoughts on it brought me to a point that we were talking about how you have been sometimes referred to as a disruptor of the normalcy of things. And people feel very comfortable talking to you, not just in the celebrity world, but even in the religious community as well. And
man, I've become a fixer for a lot of the preachers and leaders that people love and revere. They call me when they get in trouble, man, because here's the thing. With me, you're always going to get the truth. And you have to tell me the truth. And it's no secret. I'll use this one person as an example because he's thanked me publicly. But there was a season in the gospel singer Isaac Curry's life where he faced some challenges and some public backlash about some things that had happened or whatever. And he called me, and I really walked him through it. But the only way I would walk him through it is if he detailed to me exactly what I was dealing with. Because if you can't tell me the truth, then I can't give you the truth on how to fix your situation. And he had a conference a couple of years ago where he, stood in front of the whole place and thanked me for just being that kind of person. And so because I used to do artist development on the side and media training for high profile people and music artists, I worked with some of the who's who in gospel music, and a couple of the record companies used to use me as a consultant. And so as a result of that, when a gospel artist who's a part of a ministry or has a minister friend who gets in a little trouble, they always say, you know what, call this guy, he can help you fix it. And so I have really helped some people deal with some of their public and social scandals and some other things, man. And I don't take it for granted that people respect my point of view and understand that I am going to tell them the truth, and the truth might disrupt your norm. The truth may disrupt your rehearsed way of communicating or how you've conveyed messaging in the past. But if you will attempt to embrace my style and accept what I'm giving you, you might be better off on the other side. And I never really talk about the people I help because that's a private thing, but I can say that I personally believe that a lot of them have been better off on the other side.
So you're the Olivia Pope of the industry.
Without the dramatic TV show, and they ain't paying me whatever they was really paying the real Olivia Pope, to fix those political scandals.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel that your candidness, your truth telling, your vow to truth came from any family dynamics? Did it come from your mom, your dad? Like which are you? Or are you a combination of both?
I know my personality wise, I am a juxtaposition of both my mom and my dad. My mom is very direct. She has a very definitive opinion on things. She's really funny, very witty. I get a lot of my sense of humor from her. And then like my dad, he was like a no nonsense kind of guy. He didn't have a high tolerance for foolishness a lot. And most people know me like I live a pretty peaceful life. Like I've worked in entertainment my entire career, and back when I was a full time entertainment writer. There were a few times where like celebrities would get mad at articles that I wrote and things like that. And there was, or when I was on the radio, I'd make a joke or something, somebody would get mad. And so there were a couple little celebrity riffs that I had. But for the most part, man, like I have some of the same friends that I've had since elementary school.
Mhm.
I have met some celebrities that have become my friends who happen to be celebrities at the beginning of my career. And we are, a decade plus, some of us almost 15 plus years into relationship. And so I don't have a lot of turnover in my friendships and stuff because I try to be a consistently good people to the person in my life. I think most people connected with me would tell you that I'm a very good and a very loyal friend. I'm everybody's cheerleader. And so I think part of being a great friend, man, is telling people the truth. Back when I was a kid and my aunt used to watch reruns of Sanford and Son while she was babysitting me, Aunt Esther used to say the truth will set you free. I believe that's the scripture, Mario. Isn't that the scripture?
And then she would shout like, "Ha!"
And said she would quicken violently.
Yes.
And so if the truth does set us free, sometimes we need to be served truth as medicine, even when we don't want to take our medicine. And if you can have a friend in your life who will act like that parent and you're the child who doesn't want to take your medicine, and crunch it up and put it in your applesauce so that you're better on the other side, then sometimes I try to be that parent.
So do you think that your lane was always you always saw this lane when you were growing, like when you started to envision what age did you start to envision this, that this was going to be how John Murray would be? Is it something that you are always like writing or always looking towards this, or where's the spark?
Right. So writing was my backup plan. So from the time I was like a child, I kind of wanted to work in entertainment. I kind of wanted to work in television. So I got into this business to work in television. TV is the hardest aspect of the business to break into. And so I recognized early on that it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought it was to make my TV pursuits my reality at the top of my career. So the whole internet boom was happening. All these tech companies were launching all these platforms where you could kind of create a lane in the space for yourself. And so I had a professor when I was at Norfolk State say, "You're a really good writer. You should write on the side." So I started taking some writing elective courses. And while in college, I created an online entertainment newsletter that was like a compilation of emails and stuff that I had acquired while interning at a radio station in DC. And so I started this newsletter. I started to develop a national name for myself with the newsletter. And then I started getting freelance work with national publications and a couple news services. And I had a column that ran in a publication called EUR Web. And then I ended up going over to AOL when they acquired Black Voices. And I was one of their very first columnists. And so I was there for 7 years. And my work there put me on the radar of the people at the Tom Joyner Morning Show, which is how I ultimately did that show for almost 6 years. And so, simultaneously, man, I was writing, I was doing radio, and during that time, started getting some TV opportunities. It kind of brought me into the space as to why I got into the business from the beginning. And so, back in 2011, I walked away from Joyner. I walked away from the Tom Joyner Morning Show because I was burnt out. I was doing like 100,000 miles. A year. I was home on maybe like a Wednesday, sometimes a Wednesday and a Thursday. And I was just running, but it wasn't completely what I wanted to be doing. And so I walked away from both of those gigs and then took some time off to kind of like catch my breath and figure out what my next was. And so I started writing again on the side while I tried to make some strides toward television. And maybe 2012, I started getting calls from CNN and their sister channel HLN, and started doing stuff there, and ended up shooting a pilot for HLN and some things. And And so it started to be a lot of great movement in television up until about 2014. And I was frustrated. Things weren't lining up the way I wanted to. Me focusing on my plan A after having such a successful plan B, and it not happening the way that the plan B had fallen into place was frustrating to me. And I thought about going and taking a corporate gig. And and literally that week, while I was making a decision to tell this particular corporate company that I wanted to be considered for this job that had been presented to me, I got called in to co-host The View. And I went in and did that, and it literally changed my life. It went. I didn't realize it in the moment, but it went way better than I would have ever imagined. And I ended up signing with my first talent agency that week. Just things just fell into line, and great opportunities started to happen. And so I love the space that I'm in. I want, like anybody else, I want more. I would love an opportunity that allowed me to be on television every day, and maybe doing some cable specials on the weekends and all types of other things. But and I really think, man, this time in our country, man, with coronavirus and everything that's going on, it's going to level the playing fields, man. Like, things are going to be different. It's going to kind of sift the wheat and change some of the norms. And as a result of that, people who have been on the sidelines waiting to get in the game may just get an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I believe what I have felt has been the core of you, no matter what lane you're in, whether that be in celebrity lanes or whether that be in sacred lanes per se, that you've always been centered as far as faith. I do echo what you were talking about as being loyal. We met years ago at a Mississippi Mass Choir concert. I think that was their 25th year or something. I can't remember what it was, but we met.
It was the last time I saw Lucretia Campbell before. Well, no, when the last time. It was the last time I saw Lucretia Campbell before she had her stroke and took ill.
Yeah, she sang "Draw Me Nearer." Yes, she did. But ever since then, of course, we maintain contact. And when you say loyal, you're that person. How your journey through faith? You grew up as in the Baptist church, and then you started to go into different areas, and then start to question things, and then start to talk to. Explain that whole dynamic, your whole journey, as far as for those who don't know, how you journey through all these different asking questions, talking to people, and all this type of stuff.
Yeah, man. Like, so, I grew up in church, been in church my whole life. I grew up Baptist, and even though I was in church as a kid, like, I probably didn't get saved until like my high school years. It was a woman named Angel Shepherd, who actually is the aunt of Queen Latifah, who would pick me up and take me to church with her daughter Joy, and so she was responsible really for walking me through the salvation. And then by the time I got in the latter part of my high school years, I got introduced to this wonderful ministry in Washington D.C. called the Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church with Pastor Alfred and Susie Owens, and it was like a television worthy church presentation. And a bona fide Pentecostal experience, man. And that form of excellence in ministry, I had just never experienced before. It was the first church I had seen or witnessed do praise and worship in the way that has become the norm now. So in addition to having the church choirs and stuff, they had a praise and worship leader by the name of Charlene Nelson. And she would get up and lead worship, and everything just functioned and flowed, and it was great. So I literally
love Susie Owens, co-pastor Susie Owens. Don't you love her voice? I just love her voice.
A dynamic woman of God. But I love Bishop Alfred Owens because when I was in college and my money was funny, like, Bishop Owens wrote checks to buy me books for college, and it's funny because I got to present an award to him. One of the last years of the Bobby Jones Gospel Show, they had a brunch at the conclusion of his season. And there were some awards given to people, and they asked me to present an award to him, and they didn't even know my relationship to him. And it's funny because when you pastor a mega church like that with thousands of people, and you've got college kids and young people coming to the church, you don't know everybody. And so while Bishop was always extremely nice, we didn't have a very close rapport. I was friends with his daughter, but he didn't know me exceptionally well. And so when I got up and talked about how he wrote books for me when I was in college and things like that, he had no idea. And he was so overwhelmed, and him and co-pastor Susie called me over to that table and just profusely thanked me. And every time I see him now, he just says, "Thank you for your kind words," and it just, they're great people. Now, after spending like more than a decade or so at that church, and really it grew me up in my faith and really taught me to be a better Christian. I wanted something that felt a little more touchable. I needed something that had a little bit more of an intimate vibe, a family vibe, and so I transitioned out of there, and but still, felt very favorably of the ministry. Sometimes people transition out of a place because there's, you mad at somebody, or something. It was all about me, nothing about them. And from time to time, I still go in and check on, what's going on over there. But yeah, and then I, transitioned to a more family ministry. And I think during that time, man, there was a lot of social challenges happening in our world, with everything from, police brutality and politics, and just so many issues of humanity that were happening. Our culture was shifting and changing, and I started to feel as though the church's response to it just wasn't it wasn't a showcase of love to me. And so, asking questions and getting frustrated, and watching like Christian leaders lend voice to things that I felt were uh, uh, supporting bigotry and hatred and things like that, it became problematic for me. And so one of my friends, Dr. Kalita Forbes, was like, I'm afraid if I don't find somebody who can preach to your intellect and preach to this space that you're in, I'm going to lose you. She was like, I don't want you to become one of them stone, rocks, and crystals people. And it was just so funny to hear her say that. But one of the people she started to have me watch was Pastor E. Dewey Smith, who was somebody who was asking questions in his sermon and was questioning his theology. And I remember he preached an Easter sermon where he said, I want to preach the Easter message, I just don't know which one to preach. Mm-hmm. And he said, because the Bible is full of contradictory stories. And he started going through the multiple contradictory and conflicting scriptures around the Easter story. And he said, and this ain't the message that most preachers would be preaching on Easter, because I'm supposed to preach a little happy Disneyland type message because, everybody's here. All the guests are here. I'm supposed to entice you with a feel-good situation so you give a good offering, and then I'll see you again on New Year's Eve. He said, but that's not what I'm doing today. And so it was that type of honest approach to the word that I was like, this is what I need. And so guys like him and the pastor of Alfred Street Baptist Church, Howard John Wesley, who on Alfred Street's YouTube page, he has their young adult Bible study, Kaya, he has a message called Doubting Thomas, where it really is about him unpacking how he is working through his theology now that he's in his PhD program, and how he's having to face scriptures that he didn't want to have to face, and he's uncomfortable with some of them. And it's that type of stuff, man, because, a lot of us grew up in a generation, though this wasn't anything that I always asked questions. I always had a why, or, you have to explain. I don't understand that. And you just couldn't give me great-great-grandma's regurgitated slave religion as an answer to my questions. And I noticed that with generation, the millennial generation and generation Z that is following them, they are a question answering generation. And if you can't give them fundamental facts and tangible, substantive responses to their question, they're like, nah, we'll take your God, but I don't want this church thing because this feels like, more like a country club where you telling me what to do, and I'm following some man-made thing and not a godly driven thing. And, I kind of respect them for being so bold and asking questions and things, because that's always been who I was.
Do you feel that even outside of the church, even the world of which you're in with different noted figures, that they're equally asking questions that sometimes the church does not want to tackle or answer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, there's an episode of the Wendy Williams show that I had to do when one of the NBA players came out of the closet. And literally the first question was, well, Jawn, you're a Christian. What do you think about that? And why? And part of the reason they were doing the topic was because it was an ESPN anchor who basically went on this rant as a self-professed Christian that other men wouldn't want to be in a locker room with a gay athlete. And he got in trouble for it. I think he was suspended for it. People were calling for him to be fired. It was a very uncomfortable time. And again, in situations like that, you never hear of other faiths coming out and bashing or criticizing or turning people off when they're these big social topics and stuff in the manner in which we do. You know, a lot of them move quietly and engage with love. And even if their doctrines or their belief doesn't stand in alliance with some of the social norms or the evolution of society, they never just, you know, publicly start lashing out at people and stuff the way that I see self-professed Christians do. And so for me, uh, those type of things, in addition to what has become the norm of these church and or preacher scandals ending up on these salacious sites like guys like Larry Reed and the other guys that are out here doing that type of information or church gossip per se. You know, it makes it challenging for me to sit in settings where people are like, I really love God, but I can't get with the church. And here's the laundry list of reasons why.
How do we fix that?
If I had that answer to that question, I'd have more money than Osteen, Jakes, and every other mega church pastor put together.
I know. I just figured I asked. I figured you might have an answer to it. I want to see many people are drawn to you for many different reasons, and in some ways,
Most of them are drawn to me because I'm so handsome.
and because they are drawn to you, many of them are drawn to you from the sense of, I mean, you have become a public figure in some regards. But for many people, you are a safe place. You are a place that people can. I was going to give you a scripture. That people run to you and are safe. But people can say things to you and they know that you're going to hold it. But that's both religious and secular. What do you feel is your thing of which people feel like they can unwind, they can let down their guard, they can call you and know that it's not going anywhere else?
It's funny. I was doing this project, and one of the things they had us do was work to identify our superpowers. And I realized one of my superpowers is connection. So I really have the ability to connect with people. When I look at some of the people who inspired me to want to be in the business, they also have the gift of connection. And so connection is my thing, man. Like I like people. I like people's stories and their journeys. I work daily. You know, before this climate in our country where people appear to be more supportive and a lot more compassionate. You know, when I travel and I'm walking through the airports, I speak to the gate agents. I speak to the flight attendants. When I'm walking through stores, even if I'm on the phone, I'll pause my conversation and ask the person ringing me up, how was your day today? And you'd be surprised the amount of people who say things like, I've been at this job 7 hours today, and you're the first person to ask me how I was doing. And so I really try to have an authentic and organic connection with people. I think that's why some of my relationships last as long as they do. But connection is my superpower, and I guess that's why I've been favored to have people draw to me in the way that they do.
Do you feel that, I know you mentioned that you have had some of the same friends since middle school. Do you feel like your core group, whoever your core group is, they keep you balanced?
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny because I always envisioned myself being one of those people that had the same friends from childhood and they would be my core through and through. But the reality is, because the connection is one of my superpowers, I've really made a vast array of amazing relationships throughout the years. And so I think who I am to people and what their responses to me varies depending on the relationship. And so because of that, I have identified a few people in my life that are my go-tos when I need somebody to tell me the truth or to keep it 100 with me like I do with other people, to check me when I'm wrong. And my friends are really good about doing that. Like I'm not one of those people who can't when I'm wrong, I love to call somebody and say, "Hey, I was wrong." Like I love admitting when I'm wrong or somebody else was right, and so I'm strange like that.
Yeah. Those people that are outside of your core group that are, this is really something that I've been thinking about for people who are celebrities. Oftentimes we make them like they're not human.
Uh huh.
They're not, they're not human beings. And so every time someone sees them, it's like, can you sign this? Can you endorse this? Can you look at this? Can you hear this? You know, I'm an artist or whatever. How does the normal I don't know if there's a normal celebrities, it's not such a thing. But majority of the people that you talk to, how do they feel, even though they enjoy their craft, but how do they feel about the loss of their privacy oftentimes, and how they're not really, same thing you said about going up to someone who's at the counter and saying, how are you? Many of us are not immediately concerned about how they are as we are concerned about what they do. And if they cease doing what they do, then sometimes people cease liking them. So how do have you ever had to lift someone up doing that, walk someone through that, what that looks like, you know, in their life, and how do they feel?
You know, it's funny that you ask about that, man, because for me, that can be a great indicator of how people treat people. It's funny. I heard Aaron Lindsay in a conversation, and he quoted this Garth Brooks saying that really captures my feelings on that, which is treat kings like regular people and treat regular people like kings. So one of the reasons that I think, even before I had established myself as a personality,
Say it one more time. Treat kings like regular people and regular people like kings.
that's right.
Yeah, tweet that, y'all. All right, now say it again.
So I think part of the reason that I've had such a good relationship with people, even before I was an entity or they knew who I was, or things like that, I was never really starstruck by a celebrity. I was, you know, that just never was my thing. And so I always talked to people who may be higher profile like they were human, like they were regular. And, you know, so it makes all the difference. Like there are times when I'm out with some folks that happen to be really famous people. But the challenge is that folks will come up and only acknowledge them and not acknowledge the other people around them. And so for me, it's a great indicator of character, because if you're not polite enough or respectable enough to say, hello, everyone, how are you? And then acknowledge the person in which you want to have that fan moment with, then, you know, it always says a lot for me. It's very telling. And so I think we have to be careful because, you know, I remember going to Barbara Walters' retirement dinner, and she got up and gave this speech about how when she was at ABC and she was working, and she was, you know, the big kahuna doing the news there, and there was this production assistant at the time, they called them pages, and he was supposed to bring her scripts every day, and he had knocked on her door, and if she didn't answer, he could just go and drop them on the chair. But this particular time she was on the phone and she didn't hear him knock. And so he came in to bring the script, and he was really, he thought he was in trouble when he came in. And so instead she engaged him. She asked him about himself. She wanted to know a little bit about him. And lo and behold, that former production system is Bob Iger, the man who is currently president of the Walt Disney Company and about to retire soon. So if she had not been nice to him, as he began to grow in the ranks and ultimately became her boss, his first order of business could have been to fire her. And I saw that happen to another talent. I saw a talent that I know cuss out somebody who was, you know, a vice president at a TV network. And that person got promoted to the big boss. And literally, before they had new business cards, they canceled their show. Treat people well.
Yeah. I think that kindness is being something that's being reintroduced right now, even in this season. You know, not just being so busy, and actually being concerned about your neighbors and actually knowing who they are, not just maybe their name, but being concerned about them. And I don't think that stops no matter who you are or what you do, because people are people, and we need to make sure we do that. So there are many people who are watching tonight and that are inspired by you, inspired by what you do, might want to do what it is that you do. What would you say to them? Because you said a lot of different things that I don't think people probably got when it came to you working here, doing this, doing that, is that you paid your dues. Like you were dedicated. You didn't stop. Like for those people who say it was an overnight success, you had a long night for it to happen. So what would you say to those people who are listening now, and they have dreams, they have goals, whatever, but they don't often sometimes have that grit or that drive or that dedication to be able to do it?
I would just tell them to be their authentic self, man. You know, you find out what your purpose is, figure out a path to your purpose, and be your authentic self. Authenticity cuts through the clutter. There's a lot of people out here. Everybody wants to be somebody. Everybody wants to figure out what their next is. Everybody wants to find a path to success. But there's no reason why you should be trying to be like somebody else. Be yourself and be the best that person and the best version of yourself you can be, because that's the best way to make it in life and whatever business that you want to try to break through in.
Well, Celie said, I may be black and I may be ugly, but dear God, I'm here. So make sure that whatever you do, make sure that you are here. Well, I want to say, John Murray, I want to thank you for being on tonight. I consider you to be one of my friends. Thank you for being loyal. Thank you for being truthful. You have told me the truth, whether I want to hear it sometimes or not. I don't consider you to be a disruptor, as other people have called you. Sometimes you need people who raise the lid in your life. So I think that you have done that for many, many people. So I'm grateful that you would share this time with my family, my different people who are watching tonight. I really, really appreciate your time for you joining us tonight.
Thank you, man. And listen, they can follow me on Instagram at my name, JAWNMURRAY, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Subscribe, like, whatever the other function is. And on Twitter, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and then on Facebook, I'm at Jawn Murray World. So JAWNMURRAY World. Hit the like button. Keep up with me there.
Do you do the Always A-list? Are you still on that too?
Yes, if you want to see some of my television clips and things like that, all of that stuff is kind of housed at Always A-list. It's more of a lifestyle and video content site now, because since I'm not writing, I only do writing in a very specific kind of way now. And so, yeah, go to alwaysalist.com and you can see some of that stuff there as well.
Okay. Well, if you need a friend, you need to follow John Murray. If you need the truth, you need to follow John Murray. If you need to be rebuked, you need to follow John Murray. You need to make sure that you are connected.
All of that stuff costs too. Follow me and send a cash app.
Yeah, that too. All of that stuff. Make sure y'all do that. Donate, plant a seed, reap a harvest. All right. Good night, y'all. Have a great night. I'll see you same time next week. Always make sure you keep growing.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation just as much as I did. I hope that you follow him on all of his sites, all of his platforms, so that you can stay notified on anything that he wants to bring, any conversation he wants to have, any interview that he wants to do. I don't want you to miss anything related to John Murray as well. Stay connected to all of our platforms. Make sure that you stay notified anytime I go live, anytime we have new content. I don't want you to miss anything, so make sure you're following. If you're watching tonight and you're saying, hey, I would like to be interviewed, I would like to have a Sunday night chat, then go ahead and email us at info@mariojradford.com or let us know, because we would love to interview you, but you got to reach out and let us know. Well, that's all I have for you tonight. I hope that you stay encouraged, stay safe, stay home. I'll see you again, same time, same place, same channel next week. Good night.
Lives in you and me.